Hi, my name is Kira, and this is Kira of All Trades on Phresh Phactory TV. Today is episode 11, Pet Related Professions. Thank you so much for joining me, and we're going to get right into the topics. So, sometimes people want a pet, sometimes people have a pet, and sometimes people love pets, but they don't want them for themselves. And just like people do kids, they want to teach them, interact with them, but they might not want them for themselves. So today we're going to talk about professions that are related to pets so that if you're in any of those predicaments, whether you want them, you have them, or you just want to interact with them work wise, we can talk about some professions that are available in the industry. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you're on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Brick TV, Houston Public Television, any of those places, please feel free to visit the website www.freshfactory.com. If you want to watch more episodes, visit www.freshfactory.tv/episodes. And you can see all of the episodes that you may have missed. And if you want any further information regarding any topic of your choosing, any feedback that you might have, go to YouTube, search for our channel, Phresh Phactory TV, and leave a comment. I'll be glad to interact with you guys just as soon as I get an opportunity. Today we're going to talk about pet related professions, and I want to start by telling you that in 2008 I had a puppy of my own. I got a puppy of my own. One night I was driving through the neighborhood real late at night, coming back from a comedy show, and probably through certain places in the neighborhood, there's stop signs, but there's probably long passes of street that don't have necessarily an intersection, just long streets. So when I was going through one of these long streets, in Houston, they have these open ditches where they collect water, to make sure that it doesn't back up into people's property. And there was just a pack of puppies that were in this street that had just come out of nowhere in this ditch. It was so random. So, of course, I'm not going to run over a pack of puppies, right? So I stopped and I honked the horn and I did everything. I honked the horn and I just tried my best to get them out of the way. I flashed the lights at them and they just would not move. So I actually had a friend in the car. We both got out and shooed the puppies away and then went on to the house so everybody could go their way. And then when I get to the house, my friend's like, hey, actually, I don't want to get out. I'm like, why? So we're in the garage. I'm just like, why don't you want to get out? So my friend opens the door and shows me a puppy. I'm like, how did this puppy get in here? So the story I was told was that while we were busy shooing these other puppies away, that this one hopped in the back seat and that, the information just wasn't given. So anyway, fast forward. At that point, I had a puppy that was going to stay in my garage at the time and did stay in my garage because I really just didn't know what else to do. So the first thing I did was to call the pound. I called the local pound. It's a city run. So what I was thinking would happen is that I could call the pound and they would have someone to come and pick it up because that's what I was looking for. So the first person that I interacted with was the shelter manager. I don't know if it was due to lack of staff or whatever the case may be, but I ended up talking to the shelter manager, and the shelter manager explained to me a couple of things that I didn't know about. So basically, a shelter manager's job is to run the full operations of the shelter. They want to make sure that they're staffed or that they have information going out, that they're operational, all these things, just regular basic management things, but of a shelter. And one of the benefits of talking to the shelter manager to begin with is that she was able to just kind of step me through the whole process of what would happen if I chose to do whatever action next. So I asked if he was able to be picked up, and she says that an animal control officer would be the one to do something like picking up an animal. But that because I had already taken him into my possession, that an animal control officer would not be able to come and pick him up. So essentially, what I was told was the animal control officer's job is to enforce laws and to inform people about laws and treatment as it is relevant to animals. So basically, they want to make sure that no one's treating animals in a way that's not in agreement with the law. If they are, to do things like communicate with them, give them citations, be able to locate these animals, and then ultimately, if the situation persists, to then extract the animals, coordinate that with the shelter if they need more resources in order to do so. So I think maybe I just misunderstood the impact of the officer's job. It's an animal control officer. I just always think about the cartoons when they have the guy with the truck who's just picking up random dogs. It's not so much that it's not that. Yes, they do go through the streets with a truck that is able to pick up animals, but I would suspect that that is like perpetual strays and ones that have been reported by neighbors, so that is something that they're following up on. In this case, because I was already in possession of them, they were basically like, well, if you want them here at the shelter or at the PAM, you will have to bring them yourself. So I was like, okay, so then what happens next? So they said, we put him in a kennel, and we provide him a place to stay for a certain amount of time. But I didn't really hear what she was saying. So the animal technician who is dealing with the kennels is literally called a kennel technician. This person is responsible for the care inside of the shelter's kennel. So is the kennel clean? The kennel is the cage or the home that they provide for each of the animals. But in a shelter type situation, there are multiples, maybe not thousands, but I'm sure there's plenty of these cages or homes that they provide for these animals that have to be cleaned and disinfected and things like that. And then there's also basic responsibilities that come with animals: walking, feeding, these types of things, administering medications, all these. And a kennel technician is responsible for doing those things at the kennel location. The next person that the animals interact with is an animal caretaker, and kind of along the lines of the kennel technician, this person is more of a person who would be the next person they pass off the responsibilities to. So imagine that the kennel technician is there in front of the location that they're sleeping, providing them food there and all that. So an animal caretaker would be ones that take on additional health and behavioral tasks that are like dealing with their temperament or dealing with how the animal is communicating what their needs are, and then also passing this information forth to other people that are in the shelter. So this is probably maybe like the next step up. They even would do receptionist work to be able to take in information as it's coming in from people who are interested in bringing animals to the shelter or maybe having them picked up. But this person is a member of the staff that would be able to interact with, people and the animals and the staff all at the same time. So the next person that the animals would interact with is a care assistant. And they do a lot of similar things to like a vet tech, but a care assistant is one that's going to help on a day-to-day basis and do things like clean the animals and make sure that they have the medical care that they need, that it's actually dispensed to them. Making sure that they document what kind of things have happened throughout the day, because I would suppose that this is a whole process, right? You don't know what kind of animals these people are receiving. They may be receiving animals that have been mistreated, that they may have been on the street for an extended period of time. They may have been hurt, etc. So every single animal is going to need a different level of care. So it probably would be advantageous to have different levels of technicians that are able to do certain things depending on what the situation of that particular animal is. So next, they have an animal technician. Specifically, they do things that, are pretty normal that we can do, right? They bathe the animal, they walk them, provide food and water, and these things is what they do on a day-to-day basis. But again, these are probably tasks that can be combined into different titles if there's enough animals that one person is not able to do all of these things. But there's a lot of overlapping between these. So as you get down into the medical portion, you're going to have a medical technician who is going to be working more on making sure that the physical situation of each of the animals is taken care of. This is a person that's probably more towards the adoption side, who is going to make sure that they communicate how the animal is. They're going to triage their medical situation. So they come in and they've, got a kennel prepared for them, and they do all of these other things, and they make sure that they had, food and water set up for them and all that. But once they're in that kennel and they have established that, this is their temporary home base, someone needs to assess what their medical situation is. They need to find out what to do next. And the person who does that is a medical technician. One of the things that I was explained during this conversation was that a medical technician does these things, triage the situation, etc., understands what the medical situation is of the animal. But what I heard was that, in addition, this person could also occasionally perform euthanasia. And now I was thinking, wait, okay, so at the part where you told me that you only keep them for a certain amount of time, this is what happened. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. Like, I don't know. I'm thinking you're going to keep it for a certain amount of time. You're going to send him somewhere else. I didn't know you're going to send him to go see Jesus. So yeah, that totally threw me off. And I think she heard what I was saying, so she just was kind of like, "Oh, well, there are other options other than, this particular shelter." So she explains that, I mean, I kind of was halfway listening because she threw me off with that, but she explained to me that not all facilities are the same. They're not all run by the city. They're not all run by whatever government entity. That some of them are privately owned or, organized by different organizations whose intention is to adopt them, and they're no-kill facilities. So that you do interact with other people at those locations. They do have managers of volunteer services, and the reason why they have something like a manager of volunteer services is that that person's job is to coordinate all of those other jobs and occupations that we talked about having at the shelter. They have at a shelter regardless of whether it is city run or whatever the case may be. But the difference is that instead of having to have funds to pay someone to perform these certain tasks, maybe like a privately owned one or a nonprofit type shelter would be able to use volunteers to supplement whatever kind of finances that they do or do not have in order to get those tasks performed, which means that they wouldn't have to have, like, the city to approve a budget and all these kinds of things in order to get those tasks performed. So there would be a manager of volunteer services, and what she was telling me was I could talk with this person so that if I was to take them, I could also ask if I could volunteer at the shelter. I mean, sure, that's great. I don't mind volunteering. I've done a lot of volunteering in my life, but I was still stuck on the euthanasia part. So the rest of it I heard, but I was still stuck on that. So she says, okay, if that's the case and it works out for you, or you decide to do something else, or you want to drop them off and maybe you find something else, they also have an adoption manager. So an adoption manager, their job is to coordinate the qualification of a family and then the medical and mental and all that situation of the animal, and then ensure that they are a match in order to move the ownership of the animal from the shelter over to an individual family. So one of the things that I found out is that like you have to really qualify. But I guess it makes good sense, right? In order to adopt anything, you have to be a good match for it. But also there's different kinds of animals. So some of them are older and don't want a bunch of noise and they can't deal with it. So maybe a family that has young kids is not a good match for them. Or maybe there's an animal that has like medical issues that need to be attended to. This is going to be really expensive for a family who adopts them in order to continue up with their medical needs. So maybe someone who was on a lower budget wouldn't be able to afford it. Just these kinds of things. So apparently the job of the adoption manager is to make sure that they find a match on both sides that is going to be able to work long term. So there's also an outreach coordinator, which there's an outreach coordinator for lots of types of businesses, some being nonprofits that I can think of right off the bat, because outreach coordinators, they are the ones who are saying, hey, this is our organization, this is what we need, financial or volunteer wise or whatever, and they reach out to individuals, companies, organizations, funds, all of that in order to secure what it is that they need. So if they need volunteers, they're reaching out to different organizations that do volunteer type stuff. If they need funding, they're, putting together proposals for grants and things like that for them to receive funding, XYZ. But the outreach coordinator, their job is to go out in the community, out in the world, and figure out how they can get the resources that they need for their individual locations or for their group. Anyway, like I told you, I had a street dog in my garage at the time that, now I'm all scared because I'm thinking, I don't want y'all to kill him. So there's that. Or what did they say on the internet? Unalive him. I was done with that. So basically, after she gave me this very long explanation, I told her thank you, but I asked if that didn't fit my situation, what was there that I needed to do next to kind of, I don't know, figure out if I could keep them or whatever. And she says, well, if you just go to the vet or call a vet and explain to them the situation, that they can give you some basics about what you could need for him and that kind of stuff. And then you could send him off to, be adopted or any of these kinds of things if those situations meet your circumstance, but it will give you a little bit more time. I was like, okay. So to the veterinarian I called. So I called and I talked to the veterinarian receptionist, which a vet receptionist is a person who works in the medical field, and it's just like a receptionist that works in any other medical facility. They talk to you about some of the basic things that you might need and the cost. They were talking about pet insurance and getting his records in and all that. But because this is a street guy, I don't have anything on him. So I just basically gave her basic information, what kind of dog he looked like he could be. I didn't have a clue. It was just like, he's white and he's cute and there's that. So they made an appointment, but the veterinarian receptionist is the first person that I called. They made the appointment, and then I just waited till the next day, which was time for my appointment, and then I went in. So I make it to the veterinarian's office, and I first saw the vet tech. So the vet tech does the basic triage. They just basically confirm what it is that you said that was wrong with the animal, and they write it down in detail in this computer. You said, you got a dog off the street. He looks fine, but you want to get him checked out. So the vet tech is reading the notes that the receptionist took and then is probably doing it in more detail. They do things like there's a scale in front. They ask you to put the animal on the scale and then run over some of the basic things that could be included in a visit, and then talk about how much it could cost. So yeah, they do all of those basic things during the evaluation period, and then tell you to go sit down. You have to wait your turn, just like you have to do in any other vet's office. So me and this stray dog that I had with I don't know, a string, are just sitting in the waiting room at the vet. So then someone called us back, and apparently this is the vet's assistant. We go into a exam room, and the veterinarian assistant is under direct supervision of the veterinarian. Um, One of the things that you can tell is that they're getting ready to communicate this exact information to the vet, because they tell you that as soon as they get done doing the assessment or doing whatever kind of reviews with you, that the doctor is going to come in next. So one thing that I want to bring up is that um, there's a lot of times in between this process that was just making me think about, I don't know, things that we like and love. Like, I've had this guy for 2 days now, right? And I'm like, oh, I don't want anything bad to happen to him or anything like that. And I actually had an apartment building that I used to make available to domestic violence victims, or former domestic violence victims. And I saw two different schools of thought when it came to how people treated their animals. And one thing that I heard from one of the former tenants was that they were really happy that they found my place, because they needed a place to bring their animal as well. And as you can imagine, if anybody has an animal and they have, any kind of love for them or anything like that, they're part of their family. So sometimes domestic violence situations can continue for an extended period of time, because the violent partner will either say that they're going to harm the animal, or they actually will harm the animal, because it's a form of control. So, if you say you're going to hurt or harm something that you love, then it's a control mechanism on that partner. So, the person was just telling me that they were really appreciative of having a place to take her and her kids and her animal, because that ultimately was the decision that helped her leave. So if you have any friends or family, or if you know anyone that's in a pickle like that, and you might have been telling them, hey, you need to leave, or whatever the case may be, and they have an animal, and none of your suggestions have had the animal included, that might be why. When little kids draw the family, they draw the mama and the daddy and the sister and the brother and the dog. I mean, and the son and the side, right? But they don't leave out the dog or the cat. So even for a person who may not be interested in having a pet, for a person who does, it is very important. These guys are part of the family, and they're not to be left out. So if you're able to help, if you know anyone, if you're able to take this information and go forward with it, please, if you're able, take into consideration that this is also an important part of their family, and that if they leave, they want to leave with everyone that they care about in order to make it out safely. All right, so back to the vet. We went to the vet, and as I mentioned, we're in this exam room, and what we saw was a veterinarian assistant, and the assistant works under the supervision of the veterinarian, the doctor veterinarian themselves. So what they do is they basically monitor the care that is supposed to be given to the animal. So, right, I've talked to the receptionist. I got there and I talked to the tech. The tech wrote down all of the things that were needed. And then now we're in this exam room, and then the vet assistant is coming in. So, what they want to do is just make sure that what everybody said is true. And of course, I'm sure they have a little bit more knowledge than the others, so maybe they're able to come up with different scenarios that might be helpful. well, if they have this problem, then maybe this thing and this thing and this thing could possibly be solutions. And then also give you information about what is needed in order to find out if those are correct. So don't forget that all of this is done under the supervision of the veterinarian. So you may not see the veterinarian yet, but nothing's going to happen unless the vet gives it a thumbs up, because they have to order every single thing that happens just like they do in a regular doctor's office. So the vet tech says, I want to take a look at the records. There are none. I want to know what kind of dog he is. Let's figure out how old he is. She said he was about 4 months old. These kinds of basic things. Establish what type of animal it is, temperament. Look at things like, basics, and then get this as records to begin a history form in a medical records type way. So he says he's probably going to need some basic shots. They want to do a basic assessment on him, make sure all his stuff is, good, to determine if he's had any bad interactions out there in them streets, and then go from there. So I said, okay, sounds good. So she leaves and comes back with the vet. So the vet comes in, and a veterinarian is the doctor. It is the one who is going to actually order all of the things that are required and then participate in a lot of things. Like, I would suspect that majority of this stuff, that if it's a normal scenario where the dog is fine and they just need basics, like he just needed basics. He was fine. He just needed some shots, regular immunizations that you're not going to get if you're a street dog, in order to have easy interactions with humans and to be protected against, things that dogs have, like parvo and things like that. So when the vet came in, basic things were done, like put on stethoscope and check for heartbeat and listen to the lungs, and do an all over check for skin issues and see if there's any kind of cuts or anything like that, and check the teeth and check the paws and the whole nine. So for a first go round, the vet does the basic assessment just like a doctor would do, but the veterinarian's job is to be responsible for the care plan and follow through of the care plan for each and every animal. They are the doctors, they are the ones who are in charge, and they're the ones who are signing off their name. So although they may not perform regular things, like they may not, do every single exam, they may not do some of those things, they may be performed by the vet assistants. They are the ones who are responsible for ensuring that those care plans have been ordered and carried out. And they do things like procedures. Dogs need things cut out too, and dogs get all kinds of stuff. Like, they could get a ball lodged somewhere, they could get cut or anything like that, have something somewhere that it doesn't belong, and somebody got to get it out. So that's what vets do. But overall, they're definitely going to be available to give those treatment plans for the care of each and every animal. So yes, so we leave, and they're like, okay, we got them all these shots and all this kind of good stuff. Now, whenever you get ready to leave, you get to do the same thing that you do whenever you are in a regular doctor's office. So this is in 2008. It was during a recession, right? And I take this stray dog that was living in my garage to this vet because I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want anything to happen to him, right? And then he gets these shots. I mean, he didn't get very many. He just got like maybe 2 shots. The doctor looked at him or whatever. And then I was like, okay, cool. Then we go to the receptionist, and they're like, you're all good. Here you go. Your bill's up here at the top. Put your card in right here. And it was like $300. It was like $300 to take this stray animal that was just like lamping in my garage to the vet. And it was too late to be like, oh, I don't want to pay that, right? Because they already performed it. They can't like like unimmunize the animal, and you brought him, so the bill's on me. So $300 later, I just decided at that moment that guy is mine. I'm keeping him, and luckily I have had him for 14 years at this point. It was 2008 when I got him because in 2008, Soldier Boy, of all people, had a song out called Marco Polo. And I used to play music real, real loud. Like, I used to like have big speakers and always listen to rap music all the time. And it was weird because my puppy never made any, like, nothing. He didn't do anything to a lot of music. But every time I played Marco Polo, he would just get so crunk. So to this day, his name is Marco Polo. I call him Marco. But yeah, I guess Soldier Boy will forever have a warm place in my heart. All right. So next, this guy is growing up, right? So I have a dog now, and he is mine. So what do I do next? So he's living in the garage, right? And I do what I can for him, which is I took him to the vet. It cost me $300. I'm like, this dude is mine, and now I have to make a plan for him. I had to figure out what I'm gonna do with this animal that I made no plan for to begin with, and now I take him to the trainer. I decided that if I'm going to keep this animal, I need to do basic things like teach him how to mine, right? And I need to teach myself how to train a dog because I don't know any better. I just know that, I have a new puppy and he's like capable of tearing up my place. So we went to the animal trainer. And a animal trainer is responsible for assessing your dog's temperament, um, showing them how and when to respond to certain cues, as well as showing you how to implement those certain cues in a way that's going to get the response from the animal that you want. So he had a clicker training. He had clicker training. So that means that when I told him a command, I would hit this clicker, make a noise, and then he would know that that was a command he was supposed to follow. I don't know who came up with the clicker thing, but it worked real well. Animal trainers are super important because when you have anything that's growing up, they need to learn how to do certain things. And you can tell when a person has an animal that hasn't been trained at all, they're just kind of like annoying to have around. And no one likes annoying anything. No one wants to have their personal space taken. Nobody wants, you know, things that don't listen around, right? It's all very annoying. So it was something for me to learn how to train, how to communicate in the language that this dog would understand. But also, you can't train everything away because some things are just due to personality, XYZ, and you have to know the difference, right? So, are you training yourself as well as you're training the animal? And are you just understanding that if you have a puppy, they're just going to tear up stuff every once again because they're like little kids? So, yes, animal trainers are really good at helping you to do both sides of what you need done. And then if you have this really well trained animal now, or you're training him to be well trained, then you want him also looking good. So another group of people that I interacted with are animal groomers. So last episode was about careers in the beauty business. And there's a whole beauty business that is associated with animals. So animals need haircuts. They need their nails trimmed. You can dye an animal's hair with the pet friendly hair dye, and they have like specialists that are really good at dyeing the hair of a pet. And they have some people who get their poodles nails painted, and then some of them that get their little ears put up into um like headbands and barrettes and all these kinds of things. And these people can work in in a pet store. They can work in private grooming salons. And even now, which wasn't available at the time, they have mobile groomers that will come to your house. And the thing about being a groomer is this: groomers groomers get bit, they get scratched, they get the whole nine. But if the person's been a groomer for any length of time and they really love what they do, what they love is the fact that they're able to transform an animal's behavior over a short period of time. They know that they're not actually scared of them or that they don't hate them. It's the grooming products. It's the sound of the clippers. It's the force that they feel on their nails when they're getting them clipped. So over time, if you're able to find a groomer that you like, that's able to make your pet look good and smell good and all that kind of good stuff, they're actually able to also help them get rid of that anxiety that causes them to bite and scratch and all that kind of stuff when it comes to grooming. So having a really good animal groomer is good for everyone involved, and it gets your puppy looking good and smelling good, and you're able to interact with them better because it's much easier to interact with a good smelling, good looking, cute dog than it is a dirty one. So there's that. But as a caveat, as soon as you pay for a good grooming and you got your animal looking good, if it rains, if there's dirt, it's over with. So you might have to spend your money more than one time, or you might just give up on it. To this day, I still groom him a majority of the time by myself because I'm just like, this guy, he doesn't care. All he wants to do is be clean and at home. So I can manage that. And it's a good time to bond with your animal. All right. So next were some other professions that maybe not everybody ends up interacting with, but I've traveled a lot. I like to keep a full life, even though I have an animal. There's going to be people that you need in your life anyway. So no matter whether you have an animal or if you have a kid, you're going to need someone to watch after them. So today, I would say on a regular basis for people that work or that would like to have a variety, maybe they have mobility issues, etc. Dog walkers are really important professions. Um, Dog walkers used to just be somebody in your neighborhood. They used to just be like, maybe the neighbor, maybe, the local kid down the street or something like that. But now there's professional dog walking services where you can get in contact with someone in the neighborhood or someone maybe not in your neighborhood who needs their animal walked. Sometimes people go to work. Sometimes people have other obligations that don't make it easy for them to walk their animal during the daytime. Maybe they're going to be gone for an extended period of time during the daytime, or maybe they want to go out of town, etc. So these type of services work out really well because it allows the animal to be in their environment and it allows them to have interaction with somebody else sometimes. Everybody likes having friends, so it's a good environment in the case that everyone is a good match. So, in addition, you can have an animal sitter, and shout out to my good friend Chris, and shout out to my parents. Sometimes just having a person to walk your animal is not enough. Sometimes, if you're gone for a long period of time, you got to have somebody to watch out for your furry pal. And just like you would have lots of requirements for someone to watch your kid, you have similar requirements for somebody to watch your animal. So I definitely pick people that love me, who also love my animal, and treat him just like I would treat him. So yeah, having an animal sitter is great. Sitters normally in it really actually most of the time means that it's a person who's coming to your house. So for me, I picked friends. I've never actually used a sitting service, but I know that they're relatively popular, and there's even services that you can rent a piece of real estate where there's an animal that's still on property that a person is volunteering to come and watch watch the animal while they rent the house. So times have changed since I first was traveling and I had a dog. Now I have some of those things under control, but there are a lot more options now that are available. So there's also other options where if you're traveling, maybe your pet want to travel too. So I think sometimes he was getting bored being at the house. So, I was going on adventures. I wanted him to go on adventures too. So I would send him to an animal boarder. So an animal boarder, Boarder, is like a pet hotel. So it depends on what type of person runs the facility, just like a hotel, right? Every hotel that's like a bed and breakfast is different. Its personality is reflected from the owner. So I've taken him to boarding houses that were on ranches that just allowed him to be on red clay dirt and run around with horses and wild animals and things like that. And then a lot of times they'll send you pictures from those locations and tell you, hey, he's doing fine, so that if you're off doing something else, that you don't have to feel worried. Even better than that, in normal, like, not normal, but current times, you can get a place that will board your animal and you can have access to the live feed just the same way you would at a child's nursery, so that you'll know what your animal's up to 24/7. Maybe they have a pool and they'll show you a camera in the pool room or whatever the case may be, and then that just gives you another peace of mind, letting you know that your animal's being taken care of. And also for the sitter slash boarder, there's also somewhere in the middle. I don't know exactly what you call them. I think they call them daycare centers. So I'm gonna call it a daycare center. When he was younger, he was attending a daycare center that was privately owned by this lady who was just fanatical about animals. And I would drop him off in the morning on the way to work, and then he'd like run and play all day or whatever. And then in the afternoon, when I was done with work, I'd go and pick him up. I'm not saying that's something that's a long term option. Who wants to spend that kind of money forever and ever and ever? But some animals have anxiety and they have separation anxiety. So when their person goes to work, then they like flip out and they could tear up your whole home. But for me, I did it for him when he was growing up, because even if they're being trained and even if they don't have separation anxiety, like, if it's a puppy that's growing up, sometimes little kids just do stuff when you're not watching them. So I took him up there for that period of time so that he would be under the supervision of someone else, so I could give an opportunity to play. He wouldn't be full of energy by the time he came back. He's, been running and playing all day. So then, he already burned off some of that energy. So yes, and I think that's it. Animals are important to people. If you know a friend that's in a domestic situation that you want them to get out, please make sure to make a plan for them and their animal. It is super important. If you yourself are in a situation where you're just like, I'm feeling a little cold in my heart, then maybe you should volunteer at an animal shelter or an animal organization. Because one thing about animals is they feel your emotions. You don't have to have a whole conversation with them and tell them your deep, dark secrets like you may have to do with another person. They may ask you 1,000 questions. Well, what's wrong with you? Well, what do you do? And how come? And da 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 da. Sometimes you just go pet a puppy and go feed him and go sit next to him. And then, you know what I'm saying? They can look at you with those big old eyes. And then y'all can have a conversation and you can relieve some of that stress off of you for just a little bit. So, that's all I have for this episode today. Thank you so much for joining me. This was episode 11 of Cure of All Trades on Phresh Phactory TV, Pet Related Professions. Please be sure to join me every Sunday, 7 p.m., YouTube, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, every single podcast audio platform that I can think of, Brick TV in Brooklyn, Houston Listen, wherever you want the information, please go find it. Freshfactory.com, Phresh Phactory TV/episodes. And then if you'd like, go to the YouTube page, Phresh Phactory TV, and leave a comment and tell me that you watched this, that you liked it, and that you're going to share this information with a friend. So, again, thank you so much for joining me. See you guys next week. Hope you have a good morning, afternoon, or evening. Bye.